Hey everybody, welcome to Farm Nerd, and today we're going to be talking about Ebola. Today I want to go through some questions that people have about Ebola and its treatment, and hopefully I'll be able to provide some answers that are actually useful or at least interesting. First, what is Ebola? It's a virus. A bad one. Technically it's an RNA virus. It's also not just one virus. The one we're dealing with right now is Zaire Ebola, or Zebov, and is named for the place that it was first discovered, Zaire. What do I need to know about Ebola? First, go watch the video Sasho made about Ebola. That video is good for some baseline general knowledge. Second, go to the CDC page with questions and answers about Ebola. That page gives you some actual practical information about what you need to know. Third, the more panicky a news story sounds about Ebola, the less you should pay attention to it. Why are there no treatments for Ebola? There are. First, the one everybody seems to know about, that's called ZMapp. ZMapp is a combination of 3 humanized monoclonal antibodies. The brief description of a monoclonal antibody is this. It is an antibody or antibodies against a single or very specific target instead of the broad range of antibodies present in your blood. Second, it's humanized. That means it is an antibody not produced by humans, but engineered to make look like an antibody produced by a human. ZMapp contains 3 antibodies specific to Ebola. These antibodies are designed to bind to and inactivate the Ebola virus. ZMapp is produced in a tobacco culture, and while this is the best way to produce these antibodies, it also makes it very difficult and a very long process to produce enough for treatment of a patient. This is why so few patients have been able to be treated with ZMapp. In addition, this is an unapproved agent. That means the FDA is approving the use of a drug which actually hasn't been tested to the rigors we normally expect of drugs. That means we don't know a lot about the side effects of ZMapp or really how effective it is. There are actually a few other drugs that have either been studied for use in Ebola or have actually been used on Ebola patients. The first of these is TKM Ebola, which is a combination of small interfering RNAs. These siRNAs target the virus's ability to produce proteins it needs to function. This is another really cool example of modern biological engineering. It also means it's really difficult to produce. It falls into the same category of ZMapp with even less information about how it really works. This is really a proof of concept drug. We've never used siRNAs for the treatment of a disease before. The next drug is called brincidofovir, and this is an alteration of an antiviral drug we already have called cidofovir. This drug has already shown activity against viruses like adenovirus and BK virus and cytomegalovirus. The difference is all these other viruses are DNA virus, and Ebola is an RNA virus. Brincidofovir is currently going phase 3 clinical trials, so we have the most information about this drug, though not in the setting of actually treating Ebola patients, but other viruses. And finally, we have a drug called Avigan, which is being developed in Japan for influenza, but has also shown activity against other RNA virus like adenovirus, West Nile virus, and yellow fever. This is a promising drug, but right now all we have is information in mouse models of Ebola and not actually any treatment in humans. Why are we only treating Americans with these drugs? This is actually a sensitive issue. Originally, when Americans in Africa were becoming infected with Ebola, the FDA had to decide whether or not to let American companies use their experimental treatments. If these experimental treatments were only used on Americans, then people would say, and have said, that we are specifically benefiting only our American interests. However, if these experimental, untested drugs had been used on Africans, many people worried that later it would be said that we used experimental drugs on Africans that we were afraid to use on our own people. This, by the way, highlights a serious problem of what has been said about the Ebola outbreak in recent months, that we should view and treat us different from them, as if it really matters that there is an us, Americans, and a them, Africans, instead of just an us, humans. I hope this video was informative to you. If you still have questions about the treatments we're using for Ebola, leave them down in the comments and I'll answer them in my next video. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. There are some links in the description you might find interesting, and I'll see you next time.